Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. Doing a little bit of a different thing with today's video. We're in the front yard. My front yard, I'm taking a very different approach than the backyard food forest. Here in the front yard, what I'm trying to achieve is a xeriscape. In other words, a landscape that I'm not going to need to water at all. Of course, there's a little bit of watering required when you first plant some plants, many plants, pretty much all plants, I guess. But once established, and hopefully established very quickly in this case because these are very, very drought tolerant plants. But once established, the long-term plan is to not have to water the front yard. In Florida, we get most of our rainfall June, July, August, September. Most places around Florida will get more, probably about 2/3 of their annual rainfall will fall in those 4 months. So outside of those 4 months, it's fairly dry. The rainfall tapers off quite a bit, and you combine that with the very poor sand that we have for soil here, and it's a xeric environment during that time of year, for sure. Technically classified as a xeric environment. That might be a surprise to many, knowing how much it can rain sometimes in Florida. But no, between the sand and the heat and the lack of rainfall for about 8 months of the year, it's actually classified as a xeric environment, which is, in other words, deserts are xeric environments. Okay, so it's desert-like. But what I want out here out in the front yard is a more formal look than the backyard. I don't want to have to water it at all. And as far as mowing the grass goes, I'm hoping to reduce the amount of mowing that I need to do eventually to the point where it's very minimal. So those are my goals. So what that means is I'm not planting Mexican sunflowers in the front. I'm not planting bananas. Tropical plants, for the most part, are going to be very water-hungry plants. That's not going to fit with what I'm trying to do here at all. I'll have to water those. And I'll spend enough time watering those in the backyard food forest, and I just don't want to have to deal with watering out here in the front. Also, the bananas and the Mexican sunflowers and several of the other tropical plants, when the frost hits them, the leaves turn brown, they look ugly, and I'm trying to present a more formal, prettier look out here in the front yard. So we're going with a lot of native plants. Nobody's out watering native plants in the wild here in Florida. So if I plant those plants in my yard, then theoretically I shouldn't have to water those. I am augmenting with a few non-native species only if they're extremely drought tolerant. So that's the plan. One part of this situation that complicated matters quite a bit for me is the fact that there's a septic field line system, and you can kind of tell where it's a little greener right in here. That's where the field lines are, and if I wait a little bit longer, it'll be more clearly shown exactly where that's at. Some of it bleeds into some of this area here where I've already removed a lot of the Bermuda grass that was in here. Now, you could not design a better Bermuda grass growing system than the septic field lines. So I'm going to be finding the Bermuda and taking it out. But I've come up with a plan for planting something over the septic field lines to replace the Bermuda. Step one is going to be to actually dig up the Bermuda sod and remove it. And step two is going to be to replace it with the dune sunflower, this native ground cover with the yellow flowers. Dune sunflower and frog fruit. There's a lot of frog fruit in here. This is all frog fruit. And it's mixed in with a lot of weeds in here, but in the spring, the frog fruit will take off and really aggressively compete with the other stuff. So I know the University of Florida system has put out information about using dune sunflower, frog fruit, and a few other species over septic field lines. And I've done my own research on that, and I also agree. I think dune sunflower and frog fruit are safe over the septic. So that's my plan. So in other words, because of the septic, those 8 or so fairly dry months that we have during the year, well, the rest of the yard here is going to get bone dry, no doubt, but the septic's not. It'll stay moist, or at least down, 12, 18, 24 inches below the surface. There's going to be a constant supply of, highly fertilized water, high nutrient water there. But I'll be counting on the frog fruit and the dune sunflower to fill in thick in that area without it damaging the field line system. Let me just go ahead and list some of the species that we're going with, and you'll notice I haven't really planted anything yet over these field lines. And the other plants that I've planted, they're a little ways away from the field lines. I think it's safe where I've planted them. So let's just go over the species. I've planted regular Florida sable palmetto. That's the big iconic Florida palm tree. That's what we have here. Now, I've got a lot of native species in here. This is a longleaf pine. It's highly drought tolerant, sends down a deep taproot straight down to get its water. This is a non-native here. This is the pindo palm, but I chose it because it's very drought tolerant, and it's one of the more cold tolerant palm trees as well, similar to the Florida sable palmetto, sable palm. Again, the dune sunflower. This happens to be the East Coast Florida dune sunflower. It's a little smaller than the West Coast. They're very closely related species, but the West Coast is generally a bigger, higher, taller plant than the East Coast version. These Florida coonties I've planted, by the way, this is the north side of the house right here. So these Florida coonties are in a fairly shady area, but coontie is very shade tolerant. I've planted a bunch of these thornless prickly pears or nopali cactus. That happens to be one of the edibles I have out here. And by the way, maybe someday the pindo palm, there it is, and there's another one over here, right there. Maybe someday the pindo palm will have the edible berries, but I'm not holding my breath on that. It could take many years before that actually happens. And then this is some pink muhly grass in here. These guys. I thought about maybe planting the muhly grass over the septic field, but in the end I decided against it, and I'm keeping it a little bit off the actual septic field lines, which start somewhere right in this area here and extends that way. Let's see, did I catch all these? Oh, of course, this is Yaupon holly. Really nice little small native Florida tree. I think it's safely planted away from the septic, and I'll prune it up to grow as a small tree. Okay, did I catch everything? I think I did. I just have some more of the longleaf pines, thornless prickly pears, sable palms, Florida trees. This longleaf pine had a bunch of caterpillars on it, but I think it survived it. It's going to do okay. Looks a little less lush than the other ones because of that. Sable palm and more prickly pears. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. This is an example of a Central or North Florida Xeriscape project that also addresses the septic field lines and how to deal with that if you don't want to grow Bermuda and other weeds there. That's it for this video, folks. Y'all take care now, and happy gardening.